All right, so thank you to everyone who is here for our webinar today, Google Analytics 201, the next level of analytics management. In this webinar, we are going to go over Google Analytics 101, which was our last webinar. I'll breeze through that. So if there are any questions, though, as usual, you guys can pop them into the Q&A tab. Then we'll jump into that's actually out of order. We're going to jump into CTA Event Tracking and then custom reports and dashboards. So we appreciate you guys being here. First, we have introductions. This webinar is brought to you by Giselle. Giselle has been leading the industry in automotive websites since 2003. Our vision is to make online customer experiences excellent for customers and easy for clients. I'm Brittany Ramos. I've been doing these webinars here for a while, so if you've been to any of our webinars, you've probably met me as well as Brian. He's been a guest presenter on quite a few. So Brian Ackerman, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. It's great to be here remotely.
Yes, remotely still. So we'll dive right into the recap for we did the analytics pro tips, as we called it. So first and foremost, just, what metrics matter. This was a slide we took from our first one, and it basically is, just discussing your benchmark. What is your normal? And we understand that in today's climate, it might be difficult to understand what your normal is. So we're kind of trying to find our new normal. But just being in your analytics, finding your benchmark, and if it's changing and moving, that's okay too. But just basically understanding the different channels and how they perform is definitely where you want to start. You have something, Brian?
No, I was just throwing a pen away. It was too complicated, and I only use a computer these days.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so useful reports, acquisition source medium. This is my starting point. This is kind of where I like to begin when I dive in. It gives you a good glimpse into not only how users are performing once they arrive on your website, but also where they came from. So this is definitely a really good starting point when you're just looking to get a high-level view of your performance. Then you have the acquisition referrals report. So showing where those users came from in terms of other websites that have linked to your site. So this is a good idea too, in order to see some of these might be, you might be able to do an advertising, let's see, like Facebook. Oh, if you're getting a lot of visitors from Facebook, maybe we should look into Facebook ads as well. People are interested. So this is a good area to see, where people are coming from and how they're performing, and, maybe start thinking about advertising in a sense there. Acquisition Google Ads keywords. So this is a good report to just get a glimpse into not only what keywords are driving traffic to your website from your paid channel in this instance, but how those users are performing when they get there. You can see all the same metrics that you see across the board, and this is applied to your paid advertising. Something to take a look at here is, are these the right keywords to be driving traffic to your website? Performance will kind of give you a glimpse into that. How are they performing? If it's extremely poorly, then maybe you want to adjust how you're spending your paid search dollars. Also, you might say if something's working really well, let's focus some organic, efforts into that type of category, let's say. So it's definitely something to give you more insights into how your website's performing. And then behavior, site content, all pages. So this is just showing you your pages, how users and perform when they're there in terms of entrances, bounce rate, and then average time on page. And again, just you can take this data and decide, well, I get a lot of traffic to this page. I should look at how I can optimize it and make it better, or, any number of things basically here. But this is another great report to just show what pages are getting a lot of traffic and page views.
And just a reminder, the slash is the homepage, and we see that kind of have the most views out of anything all the time.
Yes.
But if you examine the other things in the list, you can kind of get an idea of where people are going on your site and how they're actually interacting there. And it gives you a real solid basis to kind of put together a plan for directing people around the website to what you feel is most important.
Exactly. Thank you. And then that leads us to what else you can track. This is also still from Analytics 101. So I'll try to breeze through it as quickly as I can. But event tracking. So you're able to track unique events that occur on the site, like, how many times did someone look through the images on a VDP, or are people really using the sidebar filter? These are all actions that you're able to track through event tracking. So in terms of sidebar filter, we're seeing here that on the right in analytics, we can see that model, make, trim, body, and drivetrain were the top 5 event or sidebar filters interacted with for this website here. And what are people searching for? So we know that with Giselle's platform, the free text search starts populating results before you even finish. So you'll see a lot of fragments here, and that's because people are finding what they want without having to finish their search. But yeah, it gives you an idea, again, like Brian said, on the pages, kind of what are people searching for? And what features are people viewing on the VDP? So on the VDP below, under standard features, you can see that there are the different tabs. And on the second screenshot, in terms of analytics, we see that tech specs was the top interacted with, and then it's interior, exterior. So this is just giving you an idea of what users are doing, and how they're interacting with your website.
And it's really great to track these kinds of things, because you can really dig deep and look at your conversions and things and how they relate to this. Statistic, when we looked into this a couple months ago, was that we saw people who interacted with these tech specs and these tabs were 60% roughly more likely to fill out a lead form and submit that lead.
Yeah, I love that statistic, and I didn't even know about that until earlier when we did this. So that's definitely a prime example, right, of kind of how these things are useful. And that leads us to our first poll question. How often do you review your analytics? So for fellow analytics and data nerds like Brian and myself, we're in there every day. We do realize, though, that that's not always the case for everyone, right? And it definitely is probably going to vary based on your role. And so, but
yeah, if you're a marketer, you probably look at it a little more often. And if you're an manager or something like that, maybe once a week. For us, we have it. It's my TV. When I turn it on in the morning, instead of the news, I've got analytics up.
Yeah, right. Same. It looks like it's pretty. We got 50% weekly. We have 38% monthly, and then 13% daily. So I feel like that's pretty much expected. I think weekly is probably your mid level, and I think that's pretty adequate in terms of checking on things. And monthly is pretty standard too for those that are not necessarily involved in this stuff day to day. So daily, the people that chose daily are definitely more like us, Brian.
Yeah, well, as far as identifying trends and things, monthly is a good one, because you can compare over month, and then year over year. Daily becomes a little too granular because things don't change day to day quite that fast.
Yeah, definitely. So that leads us to CTA Event Tracking.
Woohoo! All right, my section. So I want to talk a little bit about event tracking in general, and then it's going to be through the lens of tracking the CTAs, those call to actions on our SRPs and BDPs, because they are a key performance indicator. So with event tracking, some questions we can answer are, if multiple buttons are present, which buttons get clicked on the most or least? What's the interaction on mobile versus desktop? What's the interaction on the SRP versus the BDP? And then we can compare those values over time. So first off, how do you set up CTA tracking? we make use of Google Tag Manager because, I mean, I'm a fan of coding, but most people don't like to code. And then Google Tag Manager just makes it really easy to manage. So we're going to need a variable, a trigger, and a tag. And Google Tag Manager, of course, are broken out into variables, triggers, and tags. So first off, sorry, we are fighting for the screen there. First is going to be the variable. And I do the variable first because it is used in the other two portions of GTM. So we're going to do an auto event variable. That means it's going to look at the element as it happens. And then we're going to pull in the element text. This is going to be the label of the button. So that could be get your e-price, buy now, something like that. It's going to read it at the time of click. And the reason we do that is so we can get even more information. Say you have Google Translate on your website. It's going to then pull in the translated text. So you'll be able to see that in analytics. Next, we need a trigger. The trigger is kind of the thing that makes the tag happen. So the trigger is going to listen for events. In this case, it's going to be the click. And we've put a trigger on just links. And then we're going to narrow that down in just some links. Then we set conditions that have to be true. So something that has to be true on the site at the time of the click for then us to fire our tag. In this case, we're going to look for VDPs or vehicles. And then we're going to look for the element. So this is going to be the actual button that's clicked on. We use a CSS selector, kind of that's the ubiquitous selector for things on the web now. And in this case, it's the Elementor button link. Next is the tag. The tag is the what happens when the trigger fires. So for this one, we pick a Google Universal Analytics tag from the list. It's a template that gives us this neat little form to fill out for just the things that we need. You set its track type to event. This is versus a page view. And if you're familiar with analytics out of the box, everything works off of a page view. And this is why events are important, because we can then measure things after that page view or page load happens. So there are some things that we need to put in here to categorize it. A category, of course, for user interaction. An action, we call this the inventory CTA click because we're measuring clicks on it. And then the label. And in the label, you can see I've used little mustache or handlebars here for the variable. It's the variable for element text. You don't have to remember what you created in the variable section. There's a little Lego icon with a plus on it. You can click on that and get a list of all the variables to choose from. But it's easier if you see it here. Down at the bottom of this screenshot, you can see what it looks like in analytics as far as a breadcrumb path. So we can click on all events, then the event action is inventory CTA clicks, and the category, a user interaction, label. This is the label on the button that we're actually pulling in from the button click.
Very cool.
So some things you should know. These are kind of gotchas. After you've set up that tag, trigger, and variable, always test and verify that things are working. Because they don't immediately show up in analytics, it takes 24 hours roughly to start pulling in active information. You can look at the real-time report, but sometimes it's not accurate there either. So Tag Manager has this cool preview mode. You're going to use that pretty extensively. And then one of the most common things when people are setting up event tracking is you can't get it to trigger on the thing you want, or it's triggering on more things than you want. So how do you troubleshoot that? Well, you're going to use preview again. It's got lots of information in there to help. So to enter preview, it's a button in the top right. It's going to load up your screen and give you this bright orange message that says, hey, I'm in preview mode. When you're in preview mode, go to your website or the page you're testing, reload it if you have it already open, and it's going to open a nice little toolbar at the bottom. And that looks like this. The toolbar is divided into two columns. On the left, we've got the events. These are all the things that GTM is listening to on the site. So that event we used in our trigger, this is going to be listening to one of these. And then on the right-hand side, we've got all of the tags that fire and some more information about them. And you can click into tags to see more information there as well. So to test, you want to see if your thing is working. So you click on the button, the CTA. Now you pay attention to that left column for the event that fires. In this case, it was the click. And then we look at the right column and we see our tag, which was M2E CTAs. Yes, we won. It's working great. We submit and save, and that's all you need to do there. But what happens if it doesn't work? So this is one of the more difficult things, as I mentioned. You keep using preview. When you click on the tag, there's a section that says triggering events, and it's going to give you the events that didn't work or didn't match, or those conditions that didn't line up with the red X. So for example, I've got this button here, and I clicked on it, and my tag didn't fire. So I clicked on the tag, and I looked at the fire and trigger section, and I see the page path and element don't match. So maybe I mistyped something or didn't put it in right. And how do I find out what should be there, or what was there when I clicked on the button? Well, you can see variables. I'm going to try drawing, Brittany, because we were talking about that. Variables is right here. So this is going to tell you all of the information that Tag Manager has available at the time of the click. So I kind of highlighted the things that match up to where they would have needed to be in the tag for it to fire correctly. And you can really see in detail what you need to put in there. And this really lines up, makes everything work correctly. You get all those green checks and everything's working.
Very cool. I like how you are able to really simplify that down. Still seems pretty technical, but it's definitely cool to understand how it works, because that's what leads us into our custom reports.
Yes, these things are so useful.
Yeah, so thank you for that. So I'm going to start off with the CTA Event Tracking custom report. So hopefully you can see this, but as we mentioned earlier, we will be sending this out to you guys after. So, so that CTA Event Tracking that Brian just walked us through is how we're able to view this custom report here. So we are looking at a custom report that is showing us all of the top, all of the CTAs that were clicked, and then it's in terms of total events. So the most clicks, and we're looking at it in segments of desktop and mobile SRPs and desktop and mobile VDPs. Very cool. We're able to see, how many of these things get, how many clicks each of these things gets. And there's a lot of really fun math you can do with this also. So you can look at the percentage in terms of mobile, in terms of SRPs, in terms of, however you want to slice it. And funny thing to note here that in this example that we're using, calculate your payment is the number one. And I feel like that's definitely one of the top CTA click getters across the board. Wouldn't you agree, Brian?
Yeah, that's one of the most popular that we're seeing. It definitely gets a lot of clicks across all of our sites that we're tracking.
Yep.
That's a reflection of the times as well, with stay at home and the buy at home movement.
Exactly.
They're concerned with finances and things like that.
Exactly. Yep. So, and how we set that up. So obviously, that CTA event tracking is critical for this report, but you just go to create the custom report, and this is what the settings are going to look like. That event label, we want to look at total events and unique events. And in terms of event action, we only want to include inventory CTA clicks. And that's how we created this report. And so SRP page custom report. So this is, we know that people pay a lot of attention to VDPs, but in terms of SRPs, we see that a lot of people stop there, because SRPs can have so much great information, and especially when it comes to new, users aren't always clicking into a VDP. So what are our top SRPs? And this report, custom report, allows you to create what you want to see, and then it's stored there for you to access at any time. You can layer on segments like we did in the previous custom report. So we can look at mobile versus desktop, or we can look at, organic versus paid. You can definitely layer on any segments you want. You can also, in the custom reports, compare timeframes. So you can change timeframes to look at any time period that you want, and then also compare it. So you can look at last month, you can look at month over month, year over year. So these are all, all of the custom reports are set up that way. But the page reports, SRP page report is a great one. And here's how that one is set up. So you have page views, users, and average session duration. That's the metrics we want to look at. And then in terms of dimensions, we were looking at page, and that report we looked at, you can actually drill down. So if you click on a page, you can see the source. So where those users came from, and before their session started. And then in terms of filters, this is Giselle platform specific, but just understanding your URL structure will help you kind of figure out how you want to filter things. But for us, in terms of that, to get the SRP, we want to exclude anything that says, we want to include anything that has inventory, but exclude /vehicle/ because that would be a VDP page.
Interestingly enough, the CTA event tracking we showed had many more clicks on the SRP CTAs. So that SRP report is pretty important. So you can start diving into kind of the things that make those stand out more for that particular site. We don't see that too often, but for this one, it was something that was interesting and different.
Yeah, I feel like I see it a bit. I feel like it's a mix right now in terms of more CTAs on SRPs, but it definitely varies, and it's something to measure because like we say, understanding your analytics and your measurements and your benchmark is definitely like the starting point. And that leads us to hours and visits custom report. This one just when are people visiting my site, right? So you're looking at the top 10 hours here, and then just sessions, page views, and pages per session. So not only when are they visiting, but is there higher quality, like people looking at more pages at different times? And again, these are customizable, so you can include more than just what we have here. But this report in particular is looking at sessions, page views, and pages per session, and then the dimension is by hour.
I like this one because it's really tells you when you're top of mind to customers or potential customers. So you can really start targeting advertising even based on hour.
Yeah, and some of it, if you're not looking at advertising as a segment or excluding it, some of it might be heavily influenced by advertising, so that's something to think about, segmenting it out. If you do have day parting in your advertising, you might want to exclude that and see naturally how are people arriving and when are people arriving, and make adjustments based on that. But that's a great point. And then that leads us to, I think this one's probably my favorite. I just think it's so interesting, but the VDP view drill down custom report. This is another Giselle specific report, but it's amazing. So you're looking at, hopefully you can see it okay, but if not, again, we'll send it out to you after. But you're looking at, on the left is step 1, and on the right is step 5. And if you see kind of right here, that's the breadcrumb. So you can see that we started at, there's which is with the vehicle condition. So you're looking at used and new. And in this instance, if you're able to see the breadcrumb, which I can barely see it myself, I clicked on new, then I clicked on Ford, and then F-150, then 2020, and then this is a list of VINs which have been redacted, but you can look at all the way through, drill down, and you can look at the metrics at each level. So I went from 1 to 5 for the screenshot to reduce clutter, but you can look at users, page views, and average time on page, all through all of those different custom dimensions that we have on the Giselle platform. And this is how that report is set up. So you're looking at the users, the page views, and the average time on page. And then the drill down is when those are all custom dimensions that the fancy Giselle wizards have built on the back end for us to pull in that information. And then we're including pages that say vehicle because those are the VDPs. So that's the way we're able to filter it to just include VDPs. Well, now for a dashboard. So monthly overview dashboard. This is, I like to look at this as like, this is this says monthly because we call this monthly. This is, like Brian said, someone who's looking at trends, who's looking, not necessarily as frequently maybe, or maybe you do look frequently, but you also want to kind of get in the blimp and kind of take a step back and look at things. This is the report or dashboard for you in that case. You can put in anything you want in here. All these little boxes, the sessions, organic sessions, bounce rate, VDP views, these are all widgets. And anything that's available in all those custom reports are available for the dashboard as well. And I'm going to just show an example here of how to add a widget to this, because if you see, let's see, right here, you hit add a widget, and that's how all of these different boxes were created. So you hit add widget. We titled it day of week. We chose bar. We chose to create a bar chart showing sessions, and we want to group them by the day of the week. And we want to show up to 7 bars because there are 7 days in the week. And that's how we get a new widget. And basically, this is another good place to, you can compare time frames. So you can look at the last 30 compared to the previous 30 year over year. And you can just look at, what landing pages you can add in. This is just an example. Again, there's endless amount of, if it's available in analytics, it's available to be added here. And so this is kind of just one place to put everything at a very high level and understand how your website is performing.
Yeah, I would really recommend spending some time configuring this dashboard for you, and what things are important for your analytics and your website or your particular pages. Just because you use it all the time, it's going to be your first look in analytics. You'll see a problem or you won't see a problem, and this is going to be the best place to see it at a glance.
Yeah, and Brian, I think you mentioned before too, like people are like, oh, another dashboard, right? But like, this is yours. Like a lot of dashboards are, they're through a third party, or they had to log in somewhere. This is in your Google Analytics, and I know the Giselle platform itself, like in the back end, we pull in some of these widgets, so they're also housed there. But this is straight from analytics, straight from Google, and it's definitely. I have a ton of dashboards that I work in, and that's kind of part of the job. But analytics is definitely one of the top ones, and one of the ones that is, as long as everything's set up and tracking properly, is going to be accurate. And
I just want to clarify what you mean by this dashboard is yours. It means it's your user on that account, and you can have a dashboard for every Google Analytics account you have with that sign-in name. So it's very personalized to you and that data set.
Exactly. So that leads us to our poll question. Are you ready to create custom reports and dashboards? Some of those reports we went through, I guess I should have probably highlighted too, like the hours and visits. That doesn't require any custom event tracking or anything like that. So there are custom reports and dashboards that do not require any, extra setup. And they are extremely useful as well. But some of those really neat ones, they do require a little bit of extra setup and GTM. But Brian, you did a great job breaking that down for us, because, it could have definitely gone over our heads, I think, or mine. But that was really simplified, and you're great at teaching that.
Well, thank you. I also wanted to say, we're always available to offer direction if you need help setting those things up. Maybe in another future webinar, we can talk about creating custom dimensions and metrics and those kinds of things and how we did that.
Yeah, I do know. I wanted to mention too that this Analytics 201 was born out of 101, because we did touch on custom event tracking and custom dashboards and whatnot, and we had a lot of interest in them. So that's how we got here. But it looks like it's about half and half, actually. Some people are ready, and then some people still want to figure out what they want to see. And like Brian said, we're always here. So you can definitely reach out to us, and we'd be happy to talk with you about that and kind of help you figure out what would be useful for you. And that leads us into what now? To get started, you just want to figure out, what do you want to track and how will visualizing it help you? This might vary based on your role. If you're a GM, you might just want the dashboard to do high level, take a peek and see how things are going. If you're in there day to day or on a weekly basis, you might want to see more. In terms of, if you're in charge of ordering inventory, keeping the stock up to date, you might want to be looking at what users, what VDPs and what SRPs and what searches people are looking for. So kind of just understanding what data is going to help you and what data may improve your dealership processes. And then just ensure that your tracking is in place and you get to creating your reports and dashboards. And again, if you do want any help, we are always here. So that leads us to our Q&A. If you have any questions, please feel free to pop them into the Q&A tab. We will answer as many as we can or as many as we get. But yeah, let's see. What else besides CTAs might be important to track? Brian, you want to handle that one?
Sure. I'll do a real easy one, banners. Banners on the homepage would be a great one to track. They're clicking on them, and then you can also track clicks versus time on page because they're often in that slider and how long does it take for people to look at it. And you can really start to tailor in, well, do I really need 8 slides? People are always staying long enough for 2 and only clicking on 1. We also had some other examples of things on the VDPs as far as those tech specs and features. And then the make and model on the left-hand side. And that's important for us because we can actually reorder those and put them in a hierarchy that people are actually using more. So if they're more interested in make, model, and trim versus price and mileage, then we can move those things around.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's great to know that those are movable, I guess, and reorderable.
Yeah, well, it's the customer experience, right? We're always trying to have the best customer experience for our shoppers. But even on that really granular dealership level, it's different from the other one, a state over, something like that. We can make those customizations and we learn about them through these events and analytics tracking.
Definitely. That's my favorite part, is just like looking at the data and learning things. So we have another question. Do you use the event value in event tracking? That one's pretty technical. You want to take that one, Brian?
Yeah, I'll keep it pretty high level on that one. So the value can only be a number, and you'll see that in analytics. It has little dollar signs for those values. It's pretty much mainly used for e-commerce and tracking those kinds of things there. So as we get more towards actually buying a car online, you'll see that used more often. But for now, it's not something we use.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian, for joining me and providing excellent illustration on event tracking and some useful insights into analytics. And thank you to everyone else who joined us today. That is it. We hope that you are leaving inspired to dive into custom reports and dashboards. And if you do have any questions, as I mentioned, you can reach out to me. I'm bramos@giselle.com. I also, there's marketing at Giselle is on the deck here. So you can reach out to us that way as well. And if you have any questions, or if you're a Giselle client, you can also reach out to our Superior Support Squad. I came up with that today. But remember to check out our next webinar, which is going to be on website accessibility, maintaining an accessible website. We're going to go over what accessibility is, what Giselle is doing to be accessible, and what additional steps you can take to ensure accessibility. So we hope to see you on our next webinar.
And shout out to Sheila for making the masks. Those are so cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.